The fires on the beach at Artemisium were a lie. Behind them, the Greek fleet was already gone, slipping past the headland in moonlight, 20 miles from where Leonidas's severed head was being mounted on a Persian pike. Thermopylae had fallen. Athens would burn within days, and the deception had just become the only weapon the Greeks had left. Thermopylae was supposed to hold for weeks. It held 3 days. But Leonidas's death gave the Greeks something they had never had, a symbol powerful enough to silence their squabbling cities. At the same moment, the navy at Artemisium, the strait between Euboea and the mainland, had been fighting Xerxes' fleet to a bloody draw. With the past loss, the fleet had no reason to stay. Themistocles, the Athenian admiral, ordered the campfires built up high. Persian scouts saw a Greek camp settling in for the night. The camp was already empty. A local fisherman rowed across to the Persians and told them the truth. The Greeks were leaving. The Persian commanders looked at the fires, looked at the report, and dismissed it. Their first major mistake, and one they would remember. Meanwhile, Xerxes marched south. Athens lay open. The population had been evacuated to Salamis, an island in the bay just off the Attic coast. On the Acropolis, a handful of priests and old men barricaded themselves behind wooden walls, certain the oracle had promised them protection. When the Persians broke through, they leapt from the cliffs rather than be taken. Xerxes burned everything: temples, statues, the olive tree of Athena. This was not random destruction. 18 years earlier, during the Ionian Revolt, Athenian troops had marched inland and burned the Persian city of Sardis, including the temple of the goddess Cybele. Persian memory was long. Xerxes was settling an account his father Darius had been unable to close. A courier was dispatched east along the royal road, the imperial highway running from the Aegean to the capital at Susa. The message: Athens has fallen, the war is won. Except it wasn't. The Greek fleet still existed, anchored in the channel between Salamis and the Attic shore, and the calendar was turning against Xerxes. The autumn equinox was approaching. Greek sailors watched for the rising of the star Arcturus, the traditional warning that the storm season had begun. A Persian fleet caught at sea by winter weather would be destroyed without an enemy in sight, so the channel mattered. The Salamis channel is less than a mile across at its narrowest. Inside it, 300 Greek triremes, the standard warship of the age, 3 banks of oars, a bronze ram at the prow, could fight a Persian fleet of roughly 1,000. Numbers stop mattering when there is no room to deploy them. But the Greek alliance was tearing itself apart. The Peloponnesians, Sparta, Corinth, and the southern cities wanted to abandon Salamis and fall back to the isthmus of Corinth, the narrow neck of land guarding their homeland. The Aeginetans wanted to defend their own islands. Themistocles had to hold them in the channel by any means necessary, so he made a threat that should have been unthinkable. If the alliance retreated, Athens would load every citizen onto its 200 ships, sail west, and found a new Athens in southern Italy. The rest of Greece could face Xerxes alone, and without Athenian ships, the Persian fleet could land in the Peloponnese itself, through the territory of Argos, which had already Medized, sided with Persia. It worked, the fleet stayed. But Themistocles knew that staying was not the same as fighting. Every night, the Peloponnesian commanders argued for retreat. Every morning, the Persians could simply wait and let Greek discipline collapse on its own. So Themistocles forced the issue. He sent his own household slave, a man named Sicinnus, tutor to his children, who spoke fluent Persian. Sicinnus rode out into the dark, alone, and was brought before the Persian commanders with a message. The Greeks were about to break and flee. The Athenians secretly were ready to defect to the Persian side. If Xerxes wanted to crush the entire Greek navy in one night, he had to seal both ends of the channel before dawn. It was a complete fabrication. The Persians believed every word. One voice in that Persian council saw through it. Artemisia of Halicarnassus, a Greek queen serving as a Persian ally, the only woman commanding a squadron in the entire fleet. She told Xerxes to wait. The Greeks would starve themselves into surrender within days. Pressing into the channel was a mistake. She reminded him of Artemisium, where the Persian fleet had fought hard and gained nothing. Herodotus tells us Xerxes admired her courage and thanked her warmly, and then ignored her advice completely. Why did the Persians believe Sicinnus's lie when they had ignored a true warning at Artemisium? Because of Artemisium, they had been fooled once by underestimating Greek movement. They were determined never to make that mistake again. This is the elegance of the trap. The Persians had been deceived once at Artemisium when they ignored a true report of Greek retreat. Now, when a false report arrived, their corrected mistake became the hook. They believed the lie precisely because they had learned from the truth they once dismissed. Yesterday's regret became today's bait. The same principle was operating across the entire campaign. Artemisium became evidence the Persian fleet could fail. Thermopylae became a unifying symbol. The burning of Athens became proof that retreat was no longer an option. Every Greek loss had been converted into bait, into symbol, into psychological leverage. By the time Sicinnus was rowing back to the Greek camp, the Persian fleet was already moving. Egyptian squadrons were dispatched to seal the western exit of the channel. The main Persian force began rowing into the strait from the east. 300 Greek triremes against perhaps 1,000 Persian ships, outnumbered roughly 3-1. But the channel was less than a mile wide. Persia could only bring forward as many ships as could fit abreast, and that number was almost exactly the number the Greeks had. The Thermopylae principle applied at sea. Themistocles had a phrase for what he was doing. Wars are decided by victories, not by stratagems of avoidance. He chose decisive battle. By sunrise, Xerxes was carried up the slopes of Mount Aigaleos and seated on a golden throne overlooking the bay. He had come to watch his fleet annihilate the last Greek resistance. Below him, his ships were rowing into a channel from which there was no exit. The campfires at Artemisium, the burning Acropolis, the slave in a rowboat, every fire, every lie, every retreat had been pulling the Persian fleet toward this single morning. The trap was set. The next video opens with the first ramming.